What's up, guys? Here today, we're going to be interviewing Josh Cohn, IFBB Pro Bodybuilder, successful businessman. Not only that, he's a man of God, but a few years ago, he was charged $3,000 per day for keeping his gym open. We're right outside of it right now. BSF Fitness, bigger, stronger, faster. He kept his gym open during lockdowns, and he was being fined by California $3 grand a day. So we're going to get to know him a little bit better, his story, where he came from. Dude's got a wild ride. Welcome to the podcast, guys. Ula Jordan Podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We got a special guest, Josh Cohn, IFBB Pro Bodybuilder, businessman, man of God, somebody who has changed the lives of a lot of people. He's also, been in trouble with California during the lockdowns. We're going to talk about, at one point he was getting charged $3,000 per day to keep his business open. That actually feeds into helping people being healthier, which is stuff that we're going to dig into and talk about. But without further ado, I want to introduce him, the man, Josh. What's going on, brother? Thank you.
Man.
Thank you so much for being here, man.
Hopefully I can live up to them.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Of course. So, well, first of all, I just kind of want to there's a lot of people watching, they're not going to know about you. Just talk a little bit about your upbringing, where you come from. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up, man.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my journey in health and fitness started, I believe, way before I never knew it was going to be a thing for me. So we spoke about this a little bit earlier on the side when we were doing some just talking. And really, a lot of it came from my upbringing and kind of a dysfunctional life as, growing up. And so, with my father being an alcoholic, I had 3 sisters. There's a lot of I don't know, I grew up from the middle, and I say this a lot, but I feel like growing up in the middle is one of the hardest places to come from. And this is my belief. I don't know if everyone would have the same belief, but when you're poor and you come from nothing, absolutely nothing, I feel like you're pushed away from that. And I feel like if you have a model of someone who's very successful, I feel like you can model that behavior and you can be like them. And so being in the middle, we never went without, presents on Christmas. We never went without presents on birthdays. Always celebrated things, but there was not a lot of happiness, and God was not the center of it, unfortunately. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And then my father was an alcoholic, so I didn't have mentorship. I didn't have that, kind of a father to take me on the first outings to do things, the first timers I call it, with my son. So I think a lot of that was really kind of created the foundation for just unstableness. But going back to being in the middle class, and again, this is my belief. I don't know if someone could resonate with this out there, but when you're in the middle, you don't have anything pushing you. And so for me, again, we didn't go without, so I wasn't being pushed from poverty, but I also wasn't being hey, this is what you should be like my dad or someone, so I could model that behavior. So I think being comfortable, right, in that middle piece was not a good place to come from, meaning that and a lot of people out there could probably relate to this, is you don't have to move, right, because you have enough to survive, but it's not enough to really be happy. So for me, that was definitely not the place where I wanted to become, where I'm at today. And I know that push one way or the other, I'm a firm believer as a coach and with my personal development journey that pain and pleasure are really what drives us. And the pain of not being that place where you want to become, like we talked about earlier with health, and the pleasure sometimes with food and drugs and alcohol could lead you to a very dark path, right? And so finding your way and being in the middle is not a good place to be at either. So it's where should I be, right?
Yeah.
But using those 2 mechanisms in my life have been very providential and powerful. And bodybuilding has been such a big, important part of my life and powerful in so many aspects. And so going back to my childhood with my father, it was seeing him continually drunk and not really understanding or knowing why, was like a lot of uncertainty. But then when he passed away when I was in third grade, we grew up in Ojai, and my mom had pulled us away from there about a month before because his drinking got so out of control. And like a month later, after that whole thing happened, I got pulled out of school to be let know that he passed away. And so I actually didn't really take it that harsh. It was definitely unfortunate. I was like, I'm not, losing your father is very tough, but it was like I didn't really quite understand. I wasn't very close to him.
So. You were so young too. Yeah, it's probably hard to comprehend what that even means.
But you know what? Well, it's like how old is your son?
My son's 8.
Yeah, so he's not in third grade yet, or is he?
Next year.
Okay, so like
I guess this year actually.
So imagine this year him losing you.
Yeah.
Would be horrific for him, right?
Yeah.
Because you're close to him. So for my daughter, it would absolutely crush her. But see, for me, it wasn't. This probably sounds way shitty, but it didn't really hurt me as much as it should. My sister, who's older than me, she's had a lifelong string of bad decisions, and she still continues to make bad decisions. Unfortunate. And I hope that changes. I really do. I pray and hope that for her every day. But because of that, it didn't really crush me. It was definitely unfortunate. It was bad, and then later in life, it really affected me because I had no mentor, I had no role model, or even a bad role model. Because sometimes when you have a bad role model, you know what not to do, right? But when I look back on it, it was such a, and Ed Milet has the same overriding belief. I'm sure he is one of my big mentors and guys that I followed for a long time, and he had something that really changed my life. And for probably 25 of the years that I've been on this planet, like I had this belief that it happened, like why me, right? And a lot of people I think have that belief of like why would he not get his shit together for like me? Like why did I not be more important for him? For like what did I do wrong, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that the moment that switch from it happened for me and not to me was really when things changed for me tremendously, because I used it as a fuel for change rather than like a place of self-pity and like poor me, right? And I think for a lot of people out there, this could be extremely powerful, because when you can make that switch and not give yourself the option to sulk and sit in that shit, like that's when things will really change for you. And I feel like that's when the really good stuff in life can happen, because once you find your purpose and you can use that as your fuel, that this situation with my father, if it didn't happen for me, I probably wouldn't be here today talking about these things that, the things that, I don't want to say greatness, but maybe some of the things that I've been able to accomplish along the way.
Yeah.
Because guys like me and you, we can see where we're going. And I think, I feel like it's a good attribute to have, is that, I don't really celebrate a lot, because I just think that it's like, it's ingrained in our personalities that we know what we can achieve, and we haven't even come close to it.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, it's unfortunate, is you can get to that place where you've achieved a lot, and you still don't give yourself the credit, right? Uh-huh. So it's kind of finding that balance, because of like, when is it ever going to be enough?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was lucky enough this last year to hit like one of my lifelong goals, bucket list items, that actually competing in bodybuilding was actually one of the things that created that goal. And, for me, when it happened, it still kind of seems unreal, but it gave me like this belief that really changed a lot of things for me, because there's a lot of things in life I feel like we have that we think they're just so incomprehensible that we'll never achieve them. And then when they start to become reality in your life and you live it, it gives you, God says, hey, like, look, like I showed you this thing that was in your heart, and now you're living it. And I know for me, that's given me extreme amounts of faith, and it's fueled the addiction to becoming better and better. For me, going back to like my childhood, my father, that whole process with him becoming an alcoholic and passing away in his sleep and, happening for me, was a belief that really changed everything for me. And I refuse to think any differently about it, because, what's the opposite? It's poor me, it's pity, it's like fucking, it's being a little bitch, right?
Yep.
And for me, because of my family, my kids, I know you can relate to this, the people that I get to coach and teach and help all over the world, now I'm so grateful for that. But like, I wouldn't be able to do those things, I feel like, if he was the father that I wanted. And I think, having that belief has served me extremely well. and I refuse to think any differently because of it. And again, if I didn't have that, I don't think that I would be here today talking about, you know, the things that we're going to talk about today. And I also, you know, I don't even give myself the option. And when it creeps back in, those thoughts of like, why not? Why it's just like, it doesn't serve me at all. And more importantly, it doesn't serve anybody around me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how can I help you if I'm over here being a little bitch?
Yeah.
You know, like, because if I'm going to give you something that I have, like, you don't want that. And nobody else, your family, your kids, your community, the people that you get to coach and teach, like, no one needs that shit. So, you know, for me, that's kind of been a huge game changer for me to really like set that belief and reinforce it like over and over again. And, you know, the mental toughness and the reinforcement of mental toughness with bodybuilding has taught us over the years, and has really been the foundation of that. So, going in and doing the hard shit, right? Is what we call it, and doing it over and over and over again till the stuff that it's out there becomes so easy that, you know, it's just a walk in the park, you know?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point where that's a great perspective. This happened for me, not to me, because like that's how I started looking at things when I had my son at 17 years old, right? Because I had my son, I found out that we were pregnant when we were 16.
Yeah.
Right. I had my son was born when I had just turned 17. So the majority of my time that I was 16 years old, I was like, I could have taken it like everybody else took it. Right. And it's like everybody's life situations are a little different. Yours was your father passing away. Mine was I got hit with that at 16 years old. And I could have looked at it like I had so many people in my life, my friends that I thought were friends. I had, you know, even family members. I had people that would look at me and they're like, your life's never going to be the same. Like, which they're like, dude, you're going to be that guy that's not successful. Like, look at all of your, you know, all of these things that you wanted to accomplish. Now you got to go in the workforce now, and you got to just bury your head down and, you know, probably go work a job that you hate forever. And you got to just do what you got to do for this kid, which it's all reality. Like, yeah, I got to bury my head and I got to go put in the fucking work now and I got to take care of them. Yeah. But why is this a bad thing? Yeah. Like this happened, like you said, this happened for me. This is going to turn me into the man that I'm supposed to become.
Yeah. Because
nothing will level you up like having a child. Like if you take it the right way, your child is like, wow, this is like, oh my gosh, when my son was born, and at the time, we'll talk about God too in a little bit. At the time, I was atheist. I did not believe in God. My wife came from a Christian family. Her dad was a pastor, had a church, everything, the full 9 yards, and I was an atheist. But for some reason, when my son was born, I knew that everything would be okay. And I know now that was God just telling me, just go to work and don't listen to the people that are going to bring you down. Just keep going. But at the time, I was just like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. And I took it with that perspective. I didn't necessarily put those words like for me, not to me. I didn't put those words to it, but I looked at it in that same perspective as just like, I'll be fine. I'll make this work. This is fine. I'm not going to let this pity party, nobody tell me. I mean, I had like friends when they found out that I had them call me and just be like, bro, like,
I'm so
dude,
sorry.
like, I'm sorry, your life's, dude, I'm so, and I was like, why are you doing that? Like, what takes the point, man?
Well, unfortunately, I think a lot of people will impose their own self-limiting beliefs. It's an easy thing to do, and especially like the normalcy, the mediocrity, and most of our family, unfortunately, right? They're going to push off their beliefs on their own limiting beliefs onto you. So it's like if they had a kid at that age, or if they were going out and doing their first, entrepreneurial experience, right? Like, it's like, oh, don't do that, because it's like their limiting beliefs and the things that they've tried in life or that they didn't try. They want to keep you safe.
Getting back into things, so I do want to know so you got into bodybuilding. Where did you realize, hey, you know what? I want to try to go pro. Like, I want to take this far.
So what's interesting is actually my goal was actually never to go pro. And actually what really got me into bodybuilding, I've always been a fan of bodybuilding my whole life, but I had this crazy goal 13 years ago, and I came to one of my mentors, and I was like, hey, and I felt in this moment before I said it out loud that I was going to be extremely vulnerable, and you got to be careful the things you say around certain people, right?
Yeah.
As you know, like these big, crazy, audacious goals, if you say it around the wrong person, aka those family members you were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
With the ones that you're like, oh, I'm so sorry, oh, you had a kid at 16 years old. Those kind of people. You sit around those people, dude, and it's like you're gonna get like shot down. And unfortunately, if I would have said that around someone like that back then, I probably would have never put the effort forth that I did.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to have a mentor that kind of thought the way we do.
Yeah.
As a bodybuilder too.
Mm-hmm.
We actually became the first after all this. Became the first ever Danny Hester, first ever class physique Mr. Olympia. So he got me.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know who he is. Yeah,
and he's been one of the important mentors and pieces of my journey. But he invented this thing called the G Flex, which is kind of like a TRX. It's very much, it was almost exactly the same on a cord system. And I went down there and he invited me for this photo shoot, and I was in pretty good shape. You know, I was able to get to like 10-12%.
How old are you?
I was like 29.
29.
Yeah. So I was able to get to like 10-12% with my skill set at the time. And didn't really know exactly how, but I knew I was like eating clean, kind of like, you can relate to that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at. And he invited me for this photo shoot, right? For this infomercial. And so for me, I was like, I felt, like, oh, this is like, I've never been to a photo shoot. I think this would be really cool. And it was down in Burbank. And that day, I remember like telling everyone, I was like, hey, dude, like, I want to be on the cover of one of these fitness magazines. Like, what would I have to do that? Mm-hmm. And again, in this moment, I felt like extremely vulnerable saying this thing out loud because, you got to be careful who you say these things around. Yeah. And, for him, it was like, hey, Josh, he goes, this new division class where men's physique at the time was the board shorts. It had just came out the year before. And it was kind of like a male model look, right? It was like kind of a soft, like, presentation of like little bodybuilding, but like toned down. Yeah. And he's like, I think you do really well in it. And I was like, I don't know, man. But when he said that, he's like, you got to go on stage to be in front of these photographers because those were the photographers finding the guys they put on the magazines. Yeah. And I think back to this moment, and it was like a light bulb that went off, right? And no bullshit, man. 13 years ago, that was the reason why I got into competing, the main reason, right? And then when I found out you could turn pro, that was like, oh yeah, I want to turn pro, of course. Like, and I think going back to my childhood with, not having my dad and not having the role model, not only did I want to be a role model for my son at the time, but I wanted to be a pro athlete, Yeah. Because like whatever that. Who doesn't want to be a pro athlete? Yeah, as a man. It doesn't matter if you're a pro baseball player, football player, pro bodybuilder. Like that was kind of like an identity that I wanted to switch. Yeah. And become. And I think before it was more for significance of importance of me feeling special about who I was. But the bigger goal, when I look back on it, was this cover that I thought was completely unreasonable, that I didn't think was possible. And, this last year, I was actually able to make that a reality. And not only did I land after a photo shoot in 2019, which was another whole story, I sent these pictures after I did my show 2 years and 3 months ago. And the photographer was like, hey man, would you want to be on this cover? Like, they're really interested in your pictures. And I was like, fuck yes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, without saying that in the email. Yeah. And then what was interesting, dude, is that I responded with, yeah, I'll absolutely be interested in this. And if you guys don't know Jason Ellis, he's like one of the best photographers in the world. And I was able to shoot with him. And it was, again, one of my dreams to be able to shoot with a photographer that I could actually be in decent enough shape to where it would actually be, they wouldn't laugh at you. Yeah. So I was like, I feel like I'm getting closer to that point. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, man. So he doesn't respond to this email. So I let a couple weeks go by. Nothing. Let a couple more weeks go by, but a month go by, and then I send him another email. I'm like, hey man, like, is that still with that cover? Is that like a thing? Like, is it still a possibility? So that would really be interested in that. Nothing. Right? And I follow him on social media, you know, he gets other covers, and I'm like, Flames, you know, you're shooting stuff, and he's like liking it, and I'm like, fuck, man. And then I started thinking about it. I go, well, you know, God it must not be the right time for me for this cover. Like, I do think at this point that I'm like, I would say good enough, but like I'm at the point where I'm like, at least within striking distance, right?
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe just it wasn't my destiny. So I have to believe, right, that God maybe just, it's not a real thing for me. So no bullshit, dude. Another year later, to the dot, I'm at my daughter's Christmas recital, and I get a notification on DM on Instagram, and he's like, "Hey man, you still interested in that cover?" And of course, like, yes, still interested.
Yeah, right away, you just fucking pulled your phone out.
This is in December, and I ended up getting the January-February issue of Men's Fitness South Africa, which was a dream come true. Absolutely did a 7-8 page article interview, which I got an issue for you, by the way. I got 20 issues that came finally a year later.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, dude. So I ordered those especially so my kids could have them, and then if anyone here wanted them, because you can't go down to Starbucks to Barnes & Noble and just go get one.
Love one.
South Africa, right?
Absolutely.
And it has a full like article in there and shit. So that was like, again, it was like one of those things in life where it reassured me that you're on the right path, man. Like you're doing the things that God placed in your heart, and you are good enough, and you know you continue to do the things correctly and put it out there, and those outputs and those realities or those fictional dreams. And again, this is like a personal thing for me. It wasn't like, I think maybe in the beginning it was like the significance of being on a cover. It was more so I never thought it could be real for me. Yeah. And if there's anybody out there that has a belief about something, or they think that it's not possibly true, like that's something that God's put in your heart, and it is true. And if you're willing to take the steps, you know, my belief for things like this now is that if you do the things that would entail for you to get to that goal, and you do enough of them for a period of time, it would be absolutely unreasonable for you not to hit that goal eventually, right? Yeah. It may not happen on your table or my timetable, right? Yep. But if you continue to put those outputs, it will happen for you. You put them. I'm definitely here to tell you guys that, because this is what's even crazier, dude. Is I competed 3 months ago in October, and it was a super stacked show. You know, pro show of 25 guys, some of the best guys in the world, some Olympians in there, and I placed ninth, which wasn't the best. I looked my best, but because the class physique IFBB stage got so competitive, you know, I just wasn't where these guys are, right? They're just pushing super hard and just gnarly, and again, no excuses. But what's crazy is 3 days later, I did another photo shoot with Jason, and that photo shoot, I did 1,600 pictures. The previous one, I think, was 3,200. So we did 4 hours, and we did it in a place called Inspiration Point in Newport Beach. And this photo shoot was different, but I was able to get this one picture that I actually picked out, and I was like, dude, I don't even believe this picture to be like true. It was like almost like if you chopped off Ole's head and you put it on this other dude's body. Yeah. Like that's what I actually thought. And I was like, dude, I cannot believe that I attained that image. And lo and behold, dude, I actually got my second cover. December, no way. November, December, this last year. So 2 covers in 1 year, which is absolutely unbelievable. But the reassurance of the path that I was on, of something that I never thought was real 13 years ago. If someone would have told me, I'd have been like, fuck you, you're out of your mind. And not to say that it would, you know, take 13 years, but like, you know, for me, that was such a belief breaker, but also like, well, I'm not going to give you 1, but 2. And the second photo, like, again, dude, it'd take a fucking million photos in a lifetime, and never thought that I could actually achieve like that look, you know? Yeah. And even the background that day, dude, was on Halloween, my daughter's birthday. Yeah. And it was like, the water was like, sky was blue, and it was like the water was like this turquoise color, and it looked almost like a fake background on Zoom. Yeah. But it was I was there. So I saw it. So, I mean, for me, that was such a big process for me. And again, I tell this story not to be like, oh, look what I did. You know, I'm very proud of what I did, and not an unhumble way. But I do that to share for anyone out there that has a goal or a dream or something that they want to achieve. And again, that was more of a personal goal for me. And I think when I was younger, if I were to back up, losing my father I didn't feel like I was good enough, but I feel like there's a lot of people out there that struggle with that same belief when things happen in life that, that's a very big, powerful, overriding belief that people have that they don't feel good enough, and whether it's from a father that wasn't there or, something that happened amongst their childhood, I feel like those things, you can really use them for, leverage, right? To happen for you. And for me, that's, with bodybuilding in my journey, it's all been fuel,
Yeah.
And then I think the biggest thing from this, like I said, is that it's changed the goal for me now. It's like, hey, these are things that I want to be able to teach people how to do. And like, there's a kid here that we help now, he's autistic, and same thing, man. His whole family doesn't believe like anything, like his dreams of becoming like one of the guys in the magazines, right? He doesn't necessarily want to be on a cover, but he wants to be able to attain that image.
Yeah.
And his whole family thinks he's crazy. He's got a side of his family that's like really negative and pessimistic, and he's got another side of his family that's supportive.
Yeah.
And he also thinks it's fucking crazy, right? Because we're like, dude, why?
Yeah.
Like, they don't think he can actually achieve it, but I'm like, game on, dude.
It's the perfect person to match with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The perfect person, dude. You can relate to that, right? Because
Yep.
you got some history with that side of it. So for me, that resonates super heavily because, like, even God, right, in the Bible, he didn't take the ones that were like the most popular, right, the wealthiest, the most like the the prom kings, right, the captain of the football teams. He took the ones that were like hookers and like the losers, right, people that would push aside and put on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I feel like that was me. And you can transform yourself, and bodybuilding and weightlifting was the foundation for me for that. And again, it's like chipping away at a sculpture.
Yep.
And honing in on it over time, you can become that. And that's, I feel like if there's one thing that I could share with your people and your audience, is that you guys can become that, and with the right support, the right game plan, the right mentors, it will happen for you. It may not happen in your timetable, but if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to show up continuously, it would be, like I said, my belief is that it would be absolutely unreasonable with a certain amount of output. And to think, dude, like, you come from a background in sales, right? Which again, I feel like is one of the best places to come from. And if you're not, you should learn that skill.
Yeah.
And not just be like the schmoozy car salesman, right?
Yeah.
We all think who you are, but it's really like, if you want to be able to influence your kids to make their bet, right?
Yep.
Or if you want to be able to influence your landlord to make some adjustments on the rent, if you can't afford it, right? And it's probably one of the most powerful skills that you can attain, but you should attain, to be able to make it out in this world that we live in today, So, yeah, man. So that's definitely
You really hit the nail. You really hit the nail hard when you were talking about like objectives and just every single day showing up and putting the work in. Because that's one of my messages that I'm always putting out there, and I'm always talking about, is that's all the shit is. All success is just showing up every single day and tackling those objectives. And showing up. Did you get your meals in, or whatever goal it is? You cross those objectives off. Did you get your meals in?
Yeah.
Did you get your workout in? Did you get enough sleep?
100%.
Every single day. Did you show up? Or if it's sales, did you show up? Did you do your calls?
Yeah.
Did you send your texts? Did you do your emails? If it's whatever, if it's becoming a better father, did you spend 30 minutes a day with your kids? Did you read with them? Did you show them how to tuck them into bed? Did you whatever? It's showing up and it's tackling that shit every single day. And it's not gonna happen on your timetable, like you said. It took you 13 years. Now, like, imagine, like, so many people that are watching this, they may not be 13 years away. Maybe they're fucking a month away and they decide to give up. Like, what would have happened if, like, 3 years ago you just decided, I'm fucking done bodybuilding.
That's crazy.
Like, maybe 2 years ago, you're like, I'm done bodybuilding. I'm 40 now.
And the crazy thing is, dude, is like, I almost did after like Sean and all this stuff with like Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, dude, I was almost like, I was at such a low point, depressed for a period of time, that I did almost give up. And the funny thing is the photo shoot that landed the first cover happened right before all that happened with Eddie and Sean and all that stuff. So it's just so interesting how like the timetable, changes your belief, but also changes the direction or the destination of your life.
Yep.
And the why, right? Like I was doing it, I think in the beginning, a lot to prove to myself,
Yep.
you know, that I was not a fucking piece of shit and that I could do it. But, you know, and, you know, those voices still come back, right? Because we all always have those, like, I call it the angel and the devil, right? Or the bitch and the badass.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you want to call it. They're always going to be there, but you can quiet that bitch or the devil, right?
Yep.
In our case, with reinforcement of the outputs.
Yep.
And to touch on what you were just saying about the things you can do every day, you know, I tell you guys, there's only two ways. You're either working the right game plan that hasn't been long enough, right, which is basically what you're saying, or you're working the wrong game plan and it's never going to happen. So like you just kind of need to have a level of awareness.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to that, and if you're aware, and again you see that like things are not like moving in that direction, change your game plan and get around someone who's got a game plan that you want to be a part of, right?
Like a mentor. That's
Yeah,
where mentors come
100%,
into
dude.
play.
I mean,
100%.
Ol and I completely, you know, personal development, mentorship, when it comes to like getting to that next level. Like I know for me, and I think I can speak for you as well, that I'll pay almost anything to get in the room, to get around people that have done shit that I have or done, and I'll do it forever until God stops waking me up. Because in the beginning, dude, I think that's another important part that I could touch upon a little bit later, but just investing into yourself.
Yeah.
And like there's no amount of money that will like fast track you there, because you could spend, you know, $50,000, $100,000 in college and be like, this is all there is.
Yeah, and then still struggle to find a job when you get out. So, how many mentors have you had in your life?
I'd say like probably a handful, like 5 or 6, like really, really like powerful ones. That really changed like a lot of the things in my life tremendously. And then like masterminds and coaching groups, I mean, at least a dozen for sure. The first big investment that I made in coaching space was probably like 14 years ago. And that was like, I remember like, it was like $2,500 and it was like a year, right? For this coaching through this doctor. And interesting thing is that I learned all the nutritional sciences thing, and he was preparing me for like building muscle and bodybuilding. But this particular coach was, and I'm not going to, you know, shouldn't share any names, but it was horrible for the competition side, for peaking on stage. But on the informational side, the science, it was extremely, it laid the foundation for a lot of things that we coach and teach on now. And gosh, that was one of the best investments that I ever made. Because if I never made that first initial investment and was like, oh, God, this is like such a big amount and a big number. Because like a lot of us, especially guys, ego and pride in the way, you know, I thought I could do it all on my own. And I thought I could just do Google and research stuff. And I did okay, but I was stuck. And to get unstuck was really paying for the answers, dude.
That's
what I call it. It gives people the money to pay for the answers.
Yeah, and what I've noticed too is like every time that I pay a coach and I get a different coach, like you said, like their expertise may not be in peaking somebody for a show,
right? But
the amount of value they give you in like everything else, you're foundational. Like I've had a lot of mentors where they might help me a ton in building X, but then when it comes to Y, it's like, but then I found somebody else to cover that, and then you just start stacking all of these different expertise.
Yeah. And I've even actually gone to like, in my personality is kind of just like get ahead of myself. So I've even been a part of a bigger mastermind, which what I mean by bigger, it was like farther down the road than I was yet. So I didn't need to be a part of that one yet, but I was like so excited to be like, I could get there. And even though I was the smallest fish in that pond, I was so anxious that I like kind of jumped the gun. And so it was like a bigger investment than I could afford and farther than I should be. And so I didn't really quite attain what I needed to get.
Yeah.
So I needed to like build some other skill sets before I got into there when I actually flourished.
Yeah. So you're a very successful businessman. So I want to go back a little bit. What were you doing before you started your business? What 9 to 5? Because you mentioned to me earlier you're working a 9 to 5. What were you doing? Let's go back there and talk about this. How you grew this into this business that you're in.
So like, I had I did so many different things. In college, my major was culinary arts, so like cooking is my trade. I made sushi for like 3.5 years when I was in high school in Ohio.
At like a restaurant? You were a sushi chef?
Sushi chef, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that was like my main thing when I was in high school, getting out of high school, going into college, and then lots of commuting, working in restaurants. But what was interesting though is I never really wanted to run a restaurant. I just wanted to be able to cook good food.
Yeah.
So it was like weird that was like the college degree that I went for, because it was, you know, it wasn't like people were like, you get out of high school and you're like, I want to go for the career I want to get into.
Is your bodybuilding food plain? Like, are you eating all of your stuff plain, or do you actually, like, have you taken some of that?
I season it a specific way, but I like to switch it up with like sauces. And here's the thing for me, anybody that really knows me knows that I like efficiency and time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like to spend time.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, get shit done. And like, I drink egg whites in the morning. People think I'm crazy for that.
Yeah.
Not maybe some of the people out there don't, that are in the working out community, but it's easy, man. It's efficient, and that's really the main reason why I do it. And even like the ground beef and the rice, like a lot of times I season it differently and hot sauce, but like it's about time and efficiency. But like when I go home to make a meal for my family, I like to make something that's more time sensitive. I like cook my girls.
Yeah.
And they help me.
That's awesome.
So, you know, yeah, but I mean, I've worked, dude, I've done like, when I was younger, I mowed lawns, I babysat like, you know, hyperactive kids that were just crazy bouncing off the walls. I've done plumbing, I've done roofing, that was all when I was younger to earn money. And then growing up, you know, I used to do car audio, home audio, before I got into the gym opportunity business, or I had the opportunity to buy the gym. It was another like part of my life where it was God, because we were renting a building that was way too big for our little stereo shop, and the partner that I had at the time, which you know, we went different ways because he kind of veered off path, was like super adamant about renting this big building, and I'm like, dude, this is way too big. We need like a fifth of the space.
Yeah.
And then again, I was like, dude, like I don't have that kind of money to buy a gym, so I don't know how this would even work. And I had like, I think like $15,000 saved up at the time, and I was like, dude, this is like all this equipment, this business. I'm like, there's no way he's gonna do it. And he was kind of just like, what do you got? You know, like one of those older guys, old timers. And he's, you know,
what's all the money you got? Yeah.
It's like, and he basically like took, I think it was like 10 grand down, and it was like worked the rest out in payments. And yeah, so the whole thing with my partner is like, I had the money saved up, my partner didn't have shit. So like, I brought more of a fitness background. Like, I didn't know what I know now. Yeah. But I knew how to work out.
How old are you at the time?
At that time, I was like 28. Okay. 27.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, and so if I were to back up even beyond that, I was like living in, this is crazy, but I was living in a motorhome off Oxnard Boulevard behind this car dealership, used car dealership, right? And I didn't have my license. I had lost my license because my mom had passed away, and I got like two DUIs, and the third one I didn't get caught for. So I'm in alcohol school. I don't have my license. I don't have my son, who's like, he's like one at this time. And I'm trying to get time with my son, living in this motorhome. And we're running the stereo business that's like not really a business. Yeah. And this opportunity came up, and yeah, we came in, and a couple of things had happened. He worked out a deal to where I'd make payments on it, and then a few years later, the partner that I had, he like found a girl in the gym, left his high school sweetheart with this younger girl in the gym, like left her, and then he stopped working out. He stopped like showing up to the gym. So now I was like, this guy's not financially contributing. He's not contributing with his time. Yeah. And I ended up getting him out of the as a partner. Yeah. Because he never was a partner anyways. You know? Yeah. So that's like the very beginning. And dude, I don't even know how I survived through that, honestly, because I had no business background. I had no fucking idea what I was doing. It was a dream come true to have a gym, but like, if I look back on, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs would agree with me on this, that if I knew the things I know now in the position that I was in then, I would have never done it, because the building had all this debt, and they had all these EDD taxes, like it was over hundreds of thousands of dollars of like debt the business was in. But like he sold the whole business with me with some of the machines here. And, you know, it was nuts. And again, I had no skill sets.
Yeah.
So I had no fucking idea what I was doing. So thank God I met my wife, and she's an accountant, and I'm accountable, but when it comes to the numbers and all that stuff, like that's her strong suit. So, you know, I met her a few years later, and she ended up coming on board and eventually leaving her job and coming on and helping me out with the whole backside of the business. And that was like the beginning of it all. But I got so many stories even past that, dude, where we took a bunch of steps forward and I fucking lost it all, you know? And then, you know, the business was doing really well. And then like during Thomas Fire, right? Like we're being evicted from the building, and they turned the building into a weed grow. It's like Trade Craft Farms, I think is what it is now over there. And because of the zoning for the building. And we didn't want to be there anyway. It was like cross street from Section 8 housing. But the problem is with the business is it wasn't really like profiting that much. We were profiting, but like not enough to move into a building like this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you can picture this moment, dude, where like our house almost burned down. I delivered, this is a whole nother story. We should do a different podcast for this one. But my daughter at the time, and you don't know this, my daughter Kaylin, I delivered her breached at home in the tub on Halloween, like I mentioned earlier in the thing.
Yeah.
She was born on Halloween, right? So 9 days later, the Thomas Fire came and almost burned our house down.
Wow.
She's living in the NICU. They get her out of the NICU. The first week we're in my wife's parents' house. And then the next 7 weeks we were living in a hotel in Oxnard Shores. Thank God the insurance covered it. But we're like, I'm writing a business plan. My wife is like doing the taxes. And we're getting evicted from this building we don't even want to be in.
Yeah.
We had nowhere to put the gym. All this equipment, right? So we're just like, bro, it was like the craziest fucking time of my life. Besides the COVID story, right?
Yeah.
And
which we'll get into.
Yeah, which was just nuts. The whole thing was just absolutely nuts. And this building was way outside of our means, numbers wise, and financially, it was too big. And my wife even tells me some days, she's like, "You got the building that you wanted." You know, things aren't going well. But she's right. But I also believe that, you know, I believed it to be a place where we could make it happen, you know? And even times where we've gone through some really, really tough times, and, you know, success is like one of those things where, you know, you decide you're successful the moment you decide, right? And like, you don't necessarily, I mean, some of the debts that we've incurred, and even, you know, on the buildings and the business, it's so big. But like when you look at someone else who's like doing way bigger shit, it's actually not that big. So I think that perspective has really helped me out a lot. So I don't feel like everything's crumbling. Yeah. When things we're not having a good day, right? Yep. The numbers aren't on track. So I have to keep reassuring myself to look back on how things were not that long ago, to just kind of give me reassurance. And success is like one of those things where, you know, you decide you're successful the moment you decide, right? And like, you don't necessarily, I mean, some of the debts that we've incurred, and even, you know, on the buildings and the business, it's so big. But like when you look at someone else who's like doing way bigger shit, it's actually not that big. So I think that perspective has really helped me out a lot. So I don't feel like everything's crumbling. Yeah. When things we're not having a good day, right? Yep. The numbers aren't on track. So I have to keep reassuring myself to look back on how things were not that long ago, to just kind of give me reassurance and faith in the process that, you know, if I'd made it through a situation like that Thomas Fire, and living in the hotel with like 2 babies with colic, and like, you know, the marriage was super rocky, and like, dude, it was nuts, absolutely nuts. And then getting into a place like this where we shouldn't even be in this building, and we made it work and continuing to make it work. It's such a blessing, you know, but with that blessing comes with a lot of like pressure, and a lot of like, you know, a lot of the things people don't see. So people from the outside looking in, you know, they're like, "Oh, that must be nice, right?" You get that a lot. Yeah. And I know you're gonna get a lot too. I'm sure you already have. Even like now, you're like, oh, it must be nice not to have a job, right? Oh,
So
you're
you
like,
guys can't handle it. Yeah, man.
You'd never fucking beat me. That's what I think today, dude. I shake my head because they always know the secret. And the secret is, man, is it's a crazy schedule. I mean, I'm up at 3:30 in the morning, and a lot of nights I don't go to bed till 11, sometimes even later. And I know sleep's important for what we do in bodybuilding. But sometimes the outputs, man, you gotta be a savage, and you gotta burn the candle at both ends of the stick, in certain seasons, and that's the way it is.
So the Thomas fire was in 2016 or 2017. I can't remember. I was still at my mom's house, and I remember walking outside of my mom's house, and at the time my wife and my son they weren't even living with me yet, so they were still at her parents. And I remember I was driving home from seeing my son at my wife's, because she was living with her parents. And I remember driving home, and I remember seeing the fire, and I got home, and it was like 10:30, and I went and I told my mom, and I was like, yo, like there's a crazy fire outside, and then we ended up, like, she didn't believe me, walked outside, showed her, all the craziness happened. But intersecting into the next part that I want to get into, so then this was 2016, 2017, so then 3 years later, COVID hits. So were you, by the time COVID hit, were you kind of finally recovered and out of that phase of...
It was a different phase, right? Because when we first got into this building, after that whole process and actually finally got in here, there was this building was zoned for a gym, but it was like, we need a conditional use permit, which I don't know if anyone out there really knows what that is.
Some California BS?
Yeah, it's just a permit that you need to be able to operate your business in the building. And yeah, if you've never done anything like this before, you'd never know what that is. But basically, we were only able to use a third of this whole building. We're about just under 10,000 square feet here at BSF. And the whole warehouse and upstairs we couldn't use. Just to give you an idea, this little area right here, we could use in the whole gym. So imagine having a gym that you own, you're paying a mortgage on, but you can't use 2/3 of it.
So you were only able to use this room and then room
the office, the other office where we're in, and this area you see up to the stairs.
Who enforces that? Like, if you would have said fuck that, do you think somebody would have came?
City, the city come in.
Wow.
And I remember someone come up and be a member of the city, right? It's crazy. It's fucking nuts, like California, right? And I'm sitting there scratching my head, and I'm just like, dude, this is only in California, right? This is before COVID, remember, dude? So this is like already like.
This is before what shit.
And I'm like, this is fishy as fuck. Because like this only happens when you rent a building, right? No, it's like you buy a building, you gotta go through it. So like, anyways, to go through all this, it's been like I said, the journey, dude.
Yeah.
And then remember, this is way before COVID. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole nother, like, part 2 of this, which maybe we do, just on the COVID, because that's an episode in itself,
Yeah.
We could really, like, go delve deep in that. And, again, kind of what we talked about a little before, but just the impact of COVID, not just on the community, but, like, I mean, there's so many levels to it, and I could talk about it for a long time, but with God, right? I mean, we'll just talk about that for a minute. And the fact that they had liquor stores and strip clubs open in California and churches and gyms shut down. I mean, I could talk about that for quite a while. I'm sure you can too.
Yeah.
Because I know with our beliefs, God being the foundation of all that, to be able to close churches down, it's insanity, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, to go live, I mean, people need that in-person touch, and we live in a country where people come here for freedom, the land of the free, right, the home of the brave. So where the fuck is that in that whole like agenda? So like for me, I think that was a big part of being on the tip of the spear, right, as they talk about in the Bible. I feel like we're called to be the ones in this area, or at least here, to create a safe place for people to come work out, and we led with that, and I feel like that was like one of the biggest things that helped us prevail at the end of it all, with some level of like like passion to overcome the agenda out there. And I definitely, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of going home at night and having some tough conversations. But when they're going from a $500 season opener fine, and we have cops literally coming in the door, like that we coach and train our members that are like in regular clothes like us.
Yeah.
And they're walking by these city officials that are trying to do the fine with the people you can see on them. Like they didn't want to impress upon these fines. And the cliche saying, man, I'll just keep saying, I'm just doing my job, sir. And I'm like, the Nazi Hitler soldiers, that's what they were doing too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, and I would
the Gestapo, right?
Yeah, and I was asking questions like, you have a young son at home, right? So I'd ask like the city official or whatever, and I'd be like, if you had to feed your son, like, would you feed him with just doing my job? Or if you had a gym like me and you had to just feed your son, what would you do? They couldn't answer. So I even had, a big part of the member population of really close friends of mine who were attorneys as well. And they were like, dude, my whole family owns liquor stores around here. And he goes, it drives me absolutely nuts that they're able to stay wide open and sell liquor, and you can't keep your gym open. And they don't even drink, but their family sells alcohol. But they're gym advocates. So they're just like, it just didn't make sense.
So is that what, so you start getting hit with $500 a day first, and then it slowly worked its way up to about $3,000 a day.
Ramped it up, yeah.
And they slowly ramped it up.
Yeah.
And so you did shut down for about a month. So the COVID hits, lockdown hits, you shut down for about a month, and then you decided, you know what? Like what was it that kind of just said, what brought that out?
The actual straw that really broke the camel's back, I guess is the way to really phrase that, is we had a member, or a friend of mine who's a member, came here in the morning and I was training, and dude, he was like super pale and clearly very depressed. He was drinking like Sparks at like 7 a.m. in the morning. Or those that you don't know, that's a truly alcoholic drink, something like that, right? And I gave him a barbell and a couple 45-pound plates to work out in his garage. And this guy was like, I don't know if he was at the point of suicide, but he looked to be like the guy, if you were to look up and, if you were to Google the guy that looked suicidal, he looked like that guy. Yeah. And so for me, I went home that night and I was like, babe, you gotta open the gym. And that was the beginning of it. My wife wrote a letter to the city, and the city took it like a fuck you. And that's not what it was. We were just informing them what we we're gonna do. Instead of being, I want to say a bitch ass about it, just doing it undercover and putting paper over the windows, which is what a lot of other businesses did. So if you did that out there, I'm not talking to you, but maybe I'm talking to you. Because people that know our gym, it's all windows around the whole thing, so there's no really hiding it. We did put tent in the windows for privacy for our members since then, but we were wide open. We were very upfront about it, but we were also very transparent of what we were doing. And again, not for the the fuck you, but it was more for, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And we feel like the benefits for someone like the individual I just told you about, we also gave him a full-time job as well. So those things that we offered for the community and for this person specifically outweighed the risk.
Yeah.
So they called it, right? And sometimes God puts an inclination in your heart to lead you on the right track. And that's what that was. And we followed it and we prayed about it a lot. And again, we've had some tough conversations because, as the leader of your family can know, if you went home and you told your wife and you were like, we're going to be fine, we weren't going to be able to stand that shit. I mean, how many days could you withstand that?
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be very many.
Yeah, 3,000.
And then it went to 1,000 to 1,500 and 3,000 a day. Like, dude, that's insane. And they knew that, Yeah. So you either have to say, fuck it, I'm putting all my poker chips in and I'm really right out. And I believe we gained a very high level of respect for that. But again, it was for the right reasons. It wasn't for like significance or business or anything other than doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And I believe the majority of the support that we did get was because of that.
Yeah.
And the continued, support that we've had. But I just feel like it was the right thing to do, at the end of the day. And again, going back to a part of our conversation is like, what do you want to be remembered for? Like, what's your legacy going to be? And, for me, I have pictures of like literally like grandma and grandpa watching our kids at our house with us on the Godspeak fireside chat, talking about this just like this and the same shit, And for me, those are the things that I want to be remembered for, not for, being like, oh, you know what, they were going to fine us. Yeah, of course, like we couldn't afford it. Who could?
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, I feel like the risk, I don't even say the reward, but the impact that we could make on helping people, because people were coming in literally do one after another, like yourself, like me, that were like, dude, you literally kept my marriage together. You kept me sober. You kept me from going fucking crazy. What was the other option? Stay home, lock down? Like, dude, overdoses were at this all-time high.
Yeah.
With all that. Like,
yeah,
people were ordering in alcohol and being told not to leave. I was like, dude, none of that shit's like, again, land of the free and home of the brave. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
So, I feel like we could have a whole nother episode on that. I know we don't have a ton of time, left, but I feel like that's really the brunt of it. Like, that's a pretty good contextual overview.
I remember driving around, or not driving around. I remember being in the gym working out and seeing people from the city driving by slowly, like just videotaping.
It was real.
And like I remember a very specific person. Like I was literally working out and I looked over, because for those of you guys who can't see, it's mostly mirrors or like big like glass everywhere. I remember like hitting like a set of triceps and looking out, and just a member of the city was just driving by, just filming us all like being in the gym and using the gym during that time. So, well, I guess, and like, how did that all end? So you guys went to court, fought through it, and then came out on what did you end up having to? What were the repercussions after doing that?
The long story short of it all is that went on for over almost 2.5 years of litigation. We did have a lot of support, and we were able to, with Rhonda Kennedy, she was able to support us and help us overcome that, and we did win the case, because I have to say a lot of it was I didn't back down, because they kept trying to like basically say reduce the fines. It was all the way down to like 1 day of fines.
Yeah.
And I still wouldn't say we're guilty. And if you know me, like that's just, even my wife was like ready to say, okay, like we're guilty.
Yeah.
But I also knew that when this shit all happens again, when and not if, they would use that 1 day of guilty to say, to throw it against us somehow in the future. So for me, I was not going to, plead guilty to something that we're not guilty of.
Yeah.
This is basically the easiest way that I could explain it. And so this went on back and forth for a long time. And like I said, about 2.5 years was the end of it all, where they finally dropped it. So, again, resilience, but also stubbornness. I can thank, my parents and my genetics and God for that, because I just like, once I have a belief or the thing that I'm going for, I don't deviate, And I thank God for putting that in my heart and having the support of my wife too. I could have never done it without her, and her family and her mom and dad. And they were the pillars of super godly Christians and examples for us. And it's been a industry trait.
So I want to touch on one last thing before we kind of wrap things up here. So, a big theme throughout this whole podcast, something that you've brought up a lot, is God, right?
Absolutely.
How did Josh Cohn, when did you become a man of God? When was that? How were you raised in a family like that? Was that how did that become a
That's actually a great question. I'm glad that you brought that up because that's extremely important to me. Something that I definitely hold very close to my heart. But what's interesting is that I had gotten invited about 8 months before I met my wife. And so this is not very long ago. So I never grew up. I grew up with like I said, a lot of toxicity, a lot of pessimism in my household.
Yep.
God wasn't the center of it. I knew He was there. He was protecting me through the car accidents and the DUIs, the recklessness, because I wouldn't be here today.
Yep.
But about, like I said, 8-9 months before I met my wife, I had a high school friend run into me at LA Fitness, and this is interesting. This is I know if this doesn't give you the chills, I know it will for you. It does for me. He invited me to church, and I was going through a rough period of my parenting process with my son, where I was like fighting or going to court, trying to get more custody of him. And the previous week, I went to this psychologist that was kind of like helping with my parental whole process, and he basically told me, he said, "Look, Josh," he goes, "you worked on the mind and the body." He's like, "but you're lacking your spirit." He goes, "The best athletes in the world, if you look at them, they have this aura around them, right?" And he said that you need to find it, what it is. And I can't tell you where to find it, but you need it to fill in that gap, right? And the interesting thing is, the next week is when I had that friend who went to me at LA Fitness invite me to a church right on the street. And what was interesting is the church wasn't the church that I needed to be at, but it was very thirsty, right? It was very like, it was like, I treated it like the gym. Like for me, it was like I showed up every Sunday, but I felt kind of out of place, but I did miss.
Yeah.
Right? And I brought my son with me every Sunday. And it literally was like I said, several months before, I think it was about six months of going, probably 8 months. And then I was introduced to my wife, and she was extreme, like huge pillar of, her parents are like, full on, they've been Christians their whole life. Her mom was like crazy that way.
It's
right?
just like my story.
Yeah. And so, my wife went through a rebellious stage where she like, rebelled and, didn't want to be in church, but she came back. And interesting was that that whole, so they were actually changing churches, and we went to this new church, Mission Church, and the first week, our service that we all went together with our parents when we first started dating was called "How to Date Godly." Right? Like, what are the odds of that?
Yep.
So if I look back, like all these steps that like God opened a door when I was ready, and that I knew that I needed that, and then I was thirsty for it, and I reached out for it, and He opened my heart. And I'm so grateful for her parents, Bob and Julia. I call them Mom and Dad, because without them, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah,
for sure. Because not having my parents is it's unfortunate, but I believe it did happen for me. But yeah, man, it's just it's so crazy to think like what God can do to you just in the matter of a couple of years. Because like I said, I didn't grow up like that.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I knew He was there my whole life, but He was waiting for me.
God is so good, man. God is so good.
Like He was waiting for me patiently for me to just wait for, like, just be open, my heart open, and be ready to be willing to just want it, right? And like now it's interesting because like I don't think of going to church on Sunday as something like I used to check the box.
Yeah.
And as a family, I always want to go there and do it on Sunday. And like, when you have young kids, as
yeah.
like it doesn't always work. So whether you journal or you spend time with God, find your ritual. I think just like fitness, you need to find what works for you and really going in on it. But man, I don't know how people do it without it, honestly. Like I tried to do it so many times, and even in the last, since He came into my life, like the hardest times were when I tried to do it on my own. And I was like, I don't need him, or I don't need a journal, or I don't need to read scripture. I don't need to read. It's like working out, right? Like spirituality, discipline, mental toughness, discipline, they're all muscles. So like you need to flex that muscle. And whatever that is, we do a thing here in our group message where we put a scripture on the board, and it's the same kind of thing, it's like scripture of the day, and it's like random. You have to put it in there, drop it in the text, and it's like, it's one of those things where it's like almost like going to work out, right? Like you just go in there and you flex the muscle, and it's a reminder of like the promises of God's word, And I think that we all need more reminders. One of the things that I've learned from one of my mentors was that we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And that is so true, right? Because most of us know inherently even how to get fit. Like most of us know that you need to like move more and eat less shit, right?
Yep.
But like, do we do it? Nah, we don't. But like, if you really broke it down for most people, even when we coach and teach, like think about it. They tell us too. They're like, oh, I know what to do. I just don't know like what to do. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, I think God's journey is a very interesting one, and it's a pleasant reminder of, man, it's the truth, right? Yep. And having it reinforced on the daily, like working out, is you got to find a way to do it. And I'm super grateful, dude, to see your journey over the last like couple of years, because I've seen an incredible transformation just like from afar, and to me that's like super cool, and I'd love to be a part of this because people need to hear more of that, Yeah. Absolutely, brother. Yeah.
He was got my God is so good, man, because I come from similar background as far as like I was a full-blown atheist. Like I said, I was a full-blown atheist. I did not believe. But my wife, her family is godly. Pastor, had a church. I get her pregnant. Now they're like, gosh, we're stuck with this guy. But they always prayed for me, and they always knew that one day it would take something. It would take something. It would take some sort of storm. And God likes to put us through these storms. Whether the storm is, you guys getting into this big building, whether it's, me getting hit with, oh my gosh, I'm having a kid at freaking 16, or COVID, the government's going to come down and start charging you a bunch of fines. He puts us through these storms, but then every single time we come out on the end, we realize, wow, he had our back the whole time. Yeah. He had our back the whole time. And we just had to, you lay into his faith, you make it through it.
To open your heart.
Open your heart, and when you're trying to get through that storm, as long as when you're trying to get through that storm, you lay into him, you will make it through. Like you said, every time you kind of, I don't need to do it, I don't need to go. Nope. Yeah. It was like almost like you were pulled back into the storm a little bit for you to realize, no, you need him. You need him.
Well, and I think having an open heart, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it too is even being atheist or different beliefs or things like that. You just don't have an open heart. Yep. And things that happen in life, man, there's no coincidences. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that God's doing in your lives out there, and if you just open your awareness and your heart to it, it's incredible what things it can do to you. I know for even the goals and things that I talked about, earlier in the podcast, a lot of it's been having a tremendous amount of faith and not trying to do it on my own, right? I believe that when you try to do it on your own, it's like holding sand in your hand and squeezing it. What happens? It goes right through your hand, right? Yep. But when you give it up to God, like I told you guys on the first cover, like I had to have, even though it was very hard to do this, I was like, well, I guess this isn't the right time for me. Mm-hmm. And when I let it go, and a fucking year went by, another year, right? From the pictures that were still a year, that same pictures, I ended up getting it. So like, to me, if you look back on it, it makes no sense, but it does on his timetable, because I feel like he was like, I want to, like, when you're ready, I'm going to give you what I promised you, right? Mm-hmm. But I wasn't ready yet. And if you think about it, like, well, how was I not ready? Because I already took the pictures. Like there's, the saying goes, it's like, and I think we should end with this, is that, God's like, he's never late, but he's always on time, right? I think with that dream coming to pass for me, I believe that that's like a perfect example of that, right? Amen. Because he placed it in my heart, so it was true, it was real. But like, if I wanted it to happen right now, It's not going to happen right now. It's going to happen on his timetable.
Amen.
You know?
Amen.
But it will happen. And again, sometimes I think that we think that it's contextual, that it will never happen. But again, if you think about the outputs, it would be unreasonable for it not to happen in a period of outputs with the right faith, right? Because it takes work and faith when those things can come together. And that's like, you know, when the real good shit happens. So,
amen.
I appreciate
Absolutely,
it,
brother. Well, tell the people where can they find you on Instagram? You got a website, social media. Let them know where they can find you so they can follow you.
Yeah, you guys can always find me here at BSF. I mean, BSF Fitness here in Ventura, California. Physique_for life, the number 4 life. That is on Instagram. And then just Josh Cohn, COHN. So that's like my Facebook. I'm not as big on the YouTube space, but we're working on that. You know, I got some plans to work on that. I got a lot of requests in those areas. And also be firing up the Different Breed podcast, which is something we started a little while back, but it's been kind of like not as active, but we'll be doing that soon, and we'll definitely bring it all on to talk about some stuff.
I would love that. I would love that, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, getting to know you, your story. You have been it's crazy, man, because there was a point in time where I used to go to Mission Church, and I remember just like seeing you briefly. And then I remember, of course, that during COVID, I met you because I started coming here because everything was closed, and being able to, just the full circle of you coaching me, seeing you go through those things, and then now coming here, I'm now interviewing you on this podcast. It's the full circle of how God works is so crazy. And it's been an honor to have you on the podcast. So
thank you, man.
Absolute pleasure.
Doing more of these very, very soon.
Absolute pleasure, man. So if you guys, if you guys got a ton of value out of this, subscribe to the channel, like it. I'm going to be linking Josh's Instagram down below. I'm also going to be putting a link down below to BSF. If you guys are ever out in Ventura, California, you want to swing by a gym, this is definitely, or you live locally maybe and you want to start coming to a badass gym, this is definitely the place to come. So I'm going to put all of his info down below there as well. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, night, evening, wherever you are. God bless. Thank you so much for watching.
Peace.
Thanks, bro.
To see your journey over the last couple of years, because I've seen an incredible transformation just like from afar, and to me that's like super cool, and I'd love to be a part of this because people need to hear more of that, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
He was got my God is so good, man, because I come from similar background as far as like I was a full-blown atheist. Like I said, I was a full-blown atheist. I did not believe. But my wife, her family is godly. Pastor, had a church. I get her pregnant. Now they're like, gosh, we're stuck with this guy. But they always prayed for me, and they always knew that one day it would take something. It would take something. It would take some sort of storm. And God likes to put us through these storms. Whether the storm is, you guys getting into this big building, whether it's, me getting hit with, oh my gosh, I'm having a kid at freaking 16, or COVID, the government's going to come down and start charging you a bunch of fines. He puts us through these storms, but then every single time we come out on the end, we realize, wow, he had our back the whole time.
Yeah.
He had our back the whole time. And we just had to, you lay into his faith, you make it through it.
To open your heart.
Open your heart, and when you're trying to get through that storm, as long as when you're trying to get through that storm, you lay into him, you will make it through. Like you said, every time you kind of, I don't need to do it, I don't need to go. Nope. It was like almost like you were pulled back into the storm a little bit for you to realize, no, you need him. You need him.
Well, and I think having an open heart, right? I think a lot of it too is even being atheist or different beliefs or things like that. You just don't have an open heart.
Yep.
And things that happen in life, man, there's no coincidences. There's a lot of things that God's doing in your lives out there, and if you just open your awareness and your heart to it, it's incredible what things it can do to you. I mean, I know for even the goals and things that I talked about, earlier in the podcast, I mean, a lot of it's been having a tremendous amount of faith and not trying to do it on my own, right? I believe that when you try to do it on your own, it's like holding sand in your hand and squeezing it. What happens? It goes right through your hand, right?
Yep.
But when you give it up to God, like I told you guys on the first cover, like I had to have, even though it was very hard to do this, I was like, well, I guess this isn't the right time for me. And you know, when I let it go, and a fucking year went by, another year, right? From the pictures that were still a year, that same pictures, you know, I ended up getting it. So like, to me, if you look back on it, it makes no sense, but it does on his timetable, because I feel like he was like, I want to, like, when you're ready, I'm going to give you what I promised you, right? But I wasn't ready yet. And if you think about it, like, well, how was I not ready? Because I already took the pictures. You know? Like, there's, you know, the saying goes, it's like, and I think we should end with this, is that, you know, God's like, he's never late, but he's always on time, right? I mean, I think with that whole dream coming to pass for me, I believe that that's like a perfect example of that, right?
Amen.
Because he placed it in my heart, so it was true, it was real. But like, if I wanted to happen right now, it's not going to happen right now. It's going to happen on his timetable.
Amen.
You know?
Amen.
But it will happen. And again, sometimes I think that we think that it's contextual, that it will never happen. But again, if you think about the outputs, it would be unreasonable for it not to happen in a period of outputs with the right faith, right? Because it takes work and faith when those things can come together. And that's like, you know, when the real good shit happens. So,
amen.
Absolutely,
brother. Well, tell the people where can they find you on Instagram? You got a website, you social media.
Like,
let them know where they can find you so they can follow you.
Yeah, you guys can always find me here at BSF. I mean, BSF Fitness here in Ventura, California. Physique_for life, the number 4 life. I was on Instagram. And then just Josh Cohn, COHN. So that's like my Facebook. I'm not as big on the YouTube space, but we're working on that. You know, Ola and I got some plans to work on that. I got a lot of requests in those areas. And also be firing up the Different Breed podcast, which is something we started a little while back, but it's been kind of like not as active, but we'll be doing that soon, and we'll definitely bring it all on to talk about some stuff.
I would love that. I would love that, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, getting to know you, your story. You have been it's crazy, man, because there was a point in time where I used to go to Mission Church, and I remember just like seeing you briefly. And then I remember, of course, then during COVID, I met you because I started coming here because everything was closed, and being able to, just the full circle of you coaching me, seeing you go through those things, and then now coming here, I'm now interviewing you on this podcast. It's the full circle of how God works is so crazy. And it's been an honor to have you on the podcast. So
thank you, man.
Absolute pleasure.
More of these very, very soon.
Absolute pleasure, man. So if you guys, if you guys got a ton of value out of this, subscribe to the channel, like it. I'm going to be linking Josh's Instagram down below. I'm also going to be putting a link down below to BSF. If you guys are ever out in Ventura, California, you want to swing by a gym, this is definitely, or you live locally maybe and you want to start coming to a badass gym, this is definitely the place to come. So I'm going to put all of his info down below there as well. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, night, evening, wherever you are. God bless. Thank you so much for watching.
Peace.
Thanks, bro.